Stowe Manor was built in 1922. It was built by Samuel Pinckney Stowe Sr., who they called SP. He built it for his second wife, who liked to entertain. She had teas every year. She actually had teas for the teachers at the beginning of each year. Since she was involved in the community in a number of different ways and had teas for the teachers, one of the more interesting stories I was told is that in the 1920s and 30s, when she would have had these teas, that she told the teachers if anybody did not have shoes to send them to Stowe Mercantile and put it on her bill. So if you think about the Depression and all of that with the mill people who would not have had a lot of money, that was quite something. The house burned just before they were ready to move in. They had some of their furnishings, rugs, that kind of thing here, but evidently someone left sanding equipment or some other type of equipment, and something ignited through the night. So the house burned. It was gutted. It did not burn to the ground because the walls are solid masonry. Henry Gaston, who was a columnist, lived across the street as a child and wrote later about watching the house burn and how they collected the hexagonal tiles from the bathroom floors to play with. The house was $50,000 as far as how much it cost to build the first time. It was $75,000 to rebuild. The town did not have a fire truck, so Sam's granddad bought the town a fire truck after the house burned. Not that it would have made a difference in what happened to him, but I think it called attention to the fact that the town perhaps needed its own fire truck. So they were quite involved in the community. As far as what people tell me, this is not the family telling me, this is other people in the community telling me that. So they moved in 1924. They had 2 children themselves. Mr. Stowe had a son by a previous marriage, and his wife had died. So they had 2 children here. So there were always a number of people living here. Everything in the house, we've tried to maintain as much as possible the historic character, even to the from the standpoint of lighting. The only room we've changed the lighting in is the library. The garage was built at the same time. If you look at the driveway, there is actually a driveway to back in for the coal truck to drop the coal. The other thing that shows up on the plans is a water fountain in the back hall that is run off the pipes from the refrigerator. Whether that actually was ever built or not, I don't know, but they had that set up in the plans so that you could have a water fountain in the house. There are 7 fireplaces in this house. Every one has a different mantle and a different type of surround as far as marble, stone, anything of that sort. The house also had the first electric refrigerator in the town. Everybody had ice boxes, so this was quite a trendy thing to be the first house with a refrigerator. The Renaissance Revival style architecture was quite interesting here as well because it's symmetrical. Everything had to be symmetrical from one side to the other. So when you walk into the front of the house, you have an embracing arm staircase, which is one of the outstanding features of it. So it's hugging you as you come in the door, as opposed to having a double staircase like you would have in Terra, which is another interesting thing too. This house was wired in conduit, so you had a natural ground built in, so we didn't have to pull out all the wiring. We had to add to and come up to current codes. So that was a nice thing that we didn't have to spend quite as much money on. The house had radiator heat. They had a coal-fired furnace. Then they had an oil furnace, an oil boiler. Then we switched it in the 90s to a gas pack and that type of thing. The radiator heat had never worked efficiently, particularly in the upstairs. If it had, we would have tried to use it, but we knew that it was not particularly functional. So we went with that and had to actually have the boiler taken out piece by piece. So that was quite a project in and of itself. You had the central vacuum, and my dad actually rebuilt or redid the motor and redid the gasket, and actually runs. So what you have is a unit that works all over the house. It has plenty of suction, but we don't have the right attachments for it because they're not what you'd have as a standard thing now. My husband and I lived in Charleston for 3 years, so we saw how important it was to try to maintain the history of the area. We saw people who started with nothing. In other words, the houses had deteriorated to the point you almost had to start from scratch. You had a shell, but that was it. So when we moved here, I told the whole family, I said, I cannot believe you are not taking better care of this house. What happened, though, is that Sam's aunt would come and stay here because this was her family home, and it did not bother her that everything had deteriorated. She remembered it as it was. When we redid it in the 90s, after my father-in-law passed away and we bought the other half of the family's interest out, one of the most surprising things, though, was when his aunt came back and walked through the house, and we had worked and redone everything. She did not like anything. When we got to the kitchen, and her favorite color was red, and the kitchen is done in red, black, and white, and she did not like that either. I had to go home. All the money and the sweat equity, and she doesn't like anything we've done. What I realized later is that we had messed up or destroyed her memories. And some years later, when she had grandchildren here and her children were back in the area to visit, they all walked around and she enjoyed it. They did. Everybody thought it was great. But one of the other things, too, we use this for a lot of church and community events and don't charge. So she kept hearing good things about the house, how much people were enjoying being here, because it was a party house. When she was growing up here, they had lots of parties of one kind or another. So at least got better. I thought, oh no, I want everybody to be happy about it. We had a number of projects that maybe you would not have anticipated to redo it, in which we did in the 90s. So we raised $50,000 for the YMCA as a part of their capital fund campaign. It took a number of people from the community and designers to do this. So what that meant for Stowe Manor is that we had one coat of paint. The number of people did not think that we would make very much money. The Charlotte Observer did not want to send anyone over here because there was nothing happening in Belmont of interest. So at the end of the first week, they did send someone, took some pictures. We had a huge number of people the second week because people had come by this house on the way to the fish camps, and they realized where it was. So we made $50,000 to help start the YMCA in Belmont, which was quite outstanding for the time. A small town normally would have made $20,000 or $25,000. So thanks to the Charlotte Observer deciding that we did have something of interest here, we made a nice amount of money. This house was built for cross ventilation. So if you open up all the doors on the main floor, it's wonderful because the air just whooshes upstairs. The closet doors all operate like old-fashioned car doors. When you open your car door, the light would turn on. In all the closets, if you open the door, the light turns on. So you have the switch built in. So they did a lot of interesting things here in addition to the central vacuum that we would not necessarily think about happening in the early 1900s. The bathroom on the main floor of the house has an enclosed shower. If you look at that, it has a rib cage effect. There are pinholes all the way around that, and they shoot water out when the shower comes on. So it's like an olden day version of a jacuzzi. We think that all of that was modern. It certainly wasn't. And in fact, this is the same shower that they have in the Biltmore house that's open air in the fitness room. And so that would have been at the late 1800s, then the turn of the century here, everybody else was getting into that same game. So that was probably one of the most interesting things to me, to see how everybody had that type of shower, at least the upper end of people did. There's always a project to do. Anytime you walk in the door, you see one more thing that you should be working on. Probably one of the biggest challenges is that if someone comes into the front gate, the price for whatever they're going to charge you triples or quadruples. So a lot of the day-to-day maintenance we do, in fact, if you see me, one of the main things that you'll see me doing is mowing the lawn. So we do a good bit of that ourselves. We have someone come to help us on occasion with leaves, and if we get behind in something, we'll do that. So it is a constant maintenance situation. When they ran the house, there were 5 people who were here. They did not live here, but you had a houseman, a yard man, a cook, a maid, and a washwoman. I keep telling people I wish just one person had stayed because I like to have the help. But it is a big maintenance situation. You have 8,375 square feet. The property originally was 10 acres, and there was a huge garden in the back, and they had the pipe that gathered the water from the gutters and the basement area ran out into that garden. They had a roaring fire in the fireplace all the time in the wintertime, a big sofa in the library, and the baby grand piano in the library, and the Christmas tree would have been in front of the large window. Probably the most outstanding feature of the house was not the embracing arms staircase, but the grand colonnade, which is part of the foyer area, because you have all the arches, and when you're looking at that, that is a very impressive architectural feature. Dan Stowe and Ted Stowe, who were cousins and nephews of the family, mentioned that as well, as far as what they considered to be the most important part of this house. And it was actually called in the family the big house because it was the biggest Stowe house. So you have the embracing arm staircase, the grand colonnade, and then all the rooms around it. There were originally 8 bedrooms. You had a master suite downstairs. The 2 bedrooms on either side of the bathroom on the main floor were the master bedroom suite. Upstairs you had 6 other bedrooms. When we redid it, set up one as a gathering space or a den, so in case your family stayed here as part of an event, then you had a space to put the television, everybody to sit and visit with each other. But all of the rooms were set up when they were bedrooms as suites, so you had 2 baths and 2 bedrooms and a connecting bath. The garage was built at the same time. They had a number of vehicles, and I'm not sure how many were actually housed in the garage at the time. I think typically, as all of us, they had storage there. But we actually still have the 1941 Cadillac that belonged to Sam's grandmother that stayed in the garage. The sleeping porch upstairs at the back of the house has what we'd call accordion-style windows. They open up. There are actually screens there. We've taken the screens out, but each windowsill has a round brass plate, and there's a number. Each screen has a round brass plate with that same number, so you knew which screen went in which window. So they really, of course, everything would have been hand done and not perfectly symmetrical as we would have had now. So they actually opened that up and would have had pallets on the floor, and the cousins and people who came to stay for a week or two. You didn't come to spend the night. They'd stay for weeks. And it was fun. A lot of the older people in town remember Easter egg hunts here. Sam's grandmother had Easter egg hunts for all the kindergarten-age children, and she did it similarly to what you'd have in Steel Magnolias, where you had the baskets, the real eggs, the chocolate bunny rabbits, that kind of thing. And in the mid-90s, when we opened the house, it was the 100th anniversary of our church, so we started having Easter egg hunts here for the church as well, and have continued to do that. We've had everything here. We've had a 1-year-old's birthday party here. We've had all kinds of weddings and 40th birthday parties, all those types of events. And it's been great, I think, for Belmont, because at the time we started this, we did not have anything in the town where you could have a party. We've also had people come and do their Christmas dinners here because their homes were not big enough so you could have everybody here and enjoy that. The only thing I know is from people who tell me stories. I grew up in Lincolnton, so I don't know any of the fun story parts, but there were lots of parties, and everybody who is probably 70 or older has stories to tell about the parties. One of the special parts of Stowe Manor is that we only do 1 event per day. We just have found that if someone wants to have a wedding here, you want to have hair and makeup done, you want to have it yours for the day, so this is your house for the day. A number of venues, you have a 4 or 5 hour time span. We felt like that pushes people too much. If something is delayed, someone's delayed coming from the airport, then you are stressed, and that's just not something that we feel is appropriate. One time we had 2 events in one day. Everybody knew about it. We were not comfortable because it is special. It's your day. Hopefully you're only doing this one time ever, so you definitely don't want to feel rushed or pushed in any way. So that's why we have stayed with 1 event per day. My hope is that it would be maintained as a house rather than be broken up into office complexes, which unfortunately probably may be the end use of it. My wish is that we would finally in Belmont have a white linen tablecloth restaurant because you have plenty of space, wonderful floor plan, and a space actually in back if you wanted to do a separate commercial kitchen that's larger than what you could manage within the framework of the house. So whether that happens or not, I don't know, but that's my wish.